What's up, everyone? Welcome to Say What I Mean podcast, and welcome to the first episode of Consciousness in Comics. Now, there's a lot of social issues that get discussed in comics, and that's the reason why I want to do this show. There's a lot of things because writers of comics are just like writers of any other entertainment, of books, of TV series, of movies. They have a particular worldview. So we want to discuss this, especially in Marvel Comics, because it's been well discussed about the social issues and X-Men and what mutants represent. But it's a lot more comics to discuss besides the X-Men. Now, when I was a kid, I wasn't a huge comic head. I liked comics. I especially liked the cartoons based off of comics like X-Men. I used to love watching X-Men every Saturday morning. That was a tradition. And I loved other comic based cartoons. But it wasn't until I got a little bit older where, technology changed and I was actually able to buy it for myself. Right now, I have Marvel Unlimited, which is great because you can go back to throwback series, and I'm going to do that today. And I know there's so many different sites and streaming organizations, creators that ask you to for support. It seemed like every organization, every service wants you to subscribe to them and pay a fee. I guess that's the way that is going now. But Marvel Unlimited, if you are in the comics, is worth it. The price is pretty reasonable too, so I will recommend that. Now, today episode we're going to discuss Luke Cage, the original Luke Cage series. And I know a lot of people didn't get into Luke Cage or might not have even heard of him until the Netflix series. And the original comic is, I won't say a lot different, but it is some differences, and we're gonna go over that. There's a lot of social themes in the first issue of Luke Cage and issue for hire in general. I mean, it touched on the prison industrial complex. It touched on gangs. It touched on experimentation. So we're gonna get into that as well. So Luke Cage, Hero for Hire, the first episode, excuse me, the first series or issues, I should say, came out June of 1972, which is interesting because 1972 was a big year. A lot of things was happening. Nixon was still president. The Vietnam War was still going on. We was going towards the end of the Black Power era, so they had a lot to pull from. Another thing about this is Luke Cage, the creators were white. On this first issue, they had no black people working on this comic. I don't know if they had some black people consulting them, but as far as the creators, the artists, the writers, all white, which is pretty interesting. The the writer on this is Archie Goodwin. So shouts out to him because I think they actually did a pretty good job, at least on the first episode. There's a lot of things you notice right away. You notice the cover. Um, One of the police guards, because Luke Cage put a lot from black exploitation films. One of the police guards actually kind of looked like a pig in human form a little bit, which is interesting because it does touch on the relationship between the police and just people in authority in the black community. So that was interesting to say the least. So there is a lot to discuss. So let's get into it. This was the overview of the series at the time. The overview is a wrongfully charged inmate in Seagate Prison named Carl Lucas undergoes a scientific experiment. When a racist prison guard tampers with the machine, Lucas develops some supernatural side effects, namely enhanced strength, bulletproof skin. Luke Cage is born. And the entrance is interesting because bulletproof skin, this has been discussed before, is an interesting power to give a black superhero. And by the way, I should mention that Luke Cage, this was the first black, American black superhero comic. There have been other black characters before Luke Cage, but this was the first one to actually get an entire series. And that's an interesting power to give a character like that because, again, the relationship between the black community and the police. And a lot of people think this is something recent. No, this has been going on for a while. Actually, been going on since the police was formed. I say that one more time. Been going on since the police was formed. So that's interesting, and especially with the gang fights. You know, a lot of it was knife fights because Diamondback, which is Luke Cage's rival, once best friend, specialties is knife. So having bulletproof or impenetrable skin is a valuable superpower. And of course, he has super strength and all that other stuff too. But it's a lot of things they touch on. Let's get into it. So one of the things that I found, I don't know if ironic is the term, but maybe it was just coincidental, whatever you want to call it. Luke Cage was the first issue was June 1st, 1972, right? June 1st. The Tuskegee experiment became known to the public July 25th, 1972. So just a little bit over a month after, maybe about a month and a half after this comic was released, the Tuskegee experiment was became known to the public. It's interesting because Luke Cage got his powers from experimentation. So I don't know if that's just perfect timing or what, but that's a hella coincidence. So man, man, that's deep. It's just crazy because I never knew that before. Just a month before it became public. That's wild. But it touched on the first issue does touch on experimentation. It talks about you know the relationship and how people is treated in jail. The very one of the very first scenes is how Luke Cage was in the hole longer than what he was supposed to be, and that's still going today. And look at what happened in Mississippi right now with the prison system there. Jay Z and Yo God, he is suing them. So it's unfortunate that some of the problems that is discussed is still happening today. But police brutality or just abuse of authority is a big theme of this because you do have some people that is nice to him, but even the people that is nice to him in this setting have ulterior motives. One of the other things I noticed before I get really deep into the prison aspect of this is how the characters was drawn. Now, if you watch the Netflix series, whether it's Luke Cage, Daredevil, whatever, Jessica Jones, Claire, played by Rosario Dawson, was in there. Claire was part of another series called Night Nurses, and but we're not even gonna get into that there. But if you see her original character, she is dark skinned. Rosario Dawson is not. And no shot of Rosario Dawson because she's a great actor. She did a great job in the series, but it's just something that I noticed right away that the female leads and the females that was portrayed to being really attractive in this series all was darker skin tone, which you don't see a lot of that today. So very interesting to say the least. And just crazy how that have flipped so much. And I think we should honor all shades of black people. It doesn't matter if you light, it doesn't matter if you brown skin, doesn't matter if you dark skin, but a lot of times we don't get that variety. And it was just interesting to see back in 72 how this was done, even though the creators was white people, but they had to be pulling from black culture at the time. So that's another thing to think about. But back to the prison. So, like I was saying, he was getting just messed up in this prison. Um, a new warden came, and the old warden got demoted. He wasn't happy. There was a doctor there, and the doctor act like he liked Luke Cage. He seemed to be nice, but the reason why he was being nice is that he wanted to do an experiment on Luke Cage. So Luke Cage reluctantly agreed to it. Didn't really want to do it, but he reluctantly did it. And the old warden that got demoted came in, messed up the experiment, left him in longer than he was supposed to, and that's how he got his powers, and that's how Luke Cage broke out. And like I said, it was just crazy to see that right before Tuskegee came out to the public. So some people, like I said, this pulled from black exploitation. So there is some stereotypes in there, especially in later issues, that I don't know people would like today. But you got to remember the times it was made. So I always try to remember it was made in a different time. That's why I break down the year, what was going on around that time. Because we always got to remember that. Overall, really dope issue, dope series for the most part. And in future episodes, we gonna go through how Luke Cage have changed as a character because they read is a few different comic series with Luke Cage. This is just the first one, and there's differences as well. We'll go through that, but thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to share the video, subscribe, share. We're trying to grow this channel. We're doing a lot of different stuff. We being unique with the content. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share the video. Click that notification bell. Peace.